Hello, in this 5-minute presentation, we're going to walk through the demonstration that Testkube did at the most recent KubeCon expedition in Chicago. Whether you're here because you want to rewatch the demonstration you saw in person, or you're receiving this link from someone who attended the show, this presentation will answer all the questions for you about how Testkube works and why you may consider it in your organization. Traditional test orchestration is done with a combination of scripts and testing tools. CI/CD systems trigger associated scripting systems such as GitHub Actions, Jenkins Pipeline, etc., where scripts have been written that trigger various testing tools. These testing tools then output their results and artifacts at various places in your environment. The problem with this setup is no one is really happy. For the DevOps team that have to manage the testing tools, they've got to manage a matrix of testing tools, versions, and app versions. They have to deal with constant requests from people who test to make revisions to the system. Especially in Kubernetes, there's security concerns over artifact and log retrieval. And essentially, as systems scale, they require more scripts, more time, and more maintenance. For people who are running the tests, whether those are testers or developers, they've got to wait on changes from the DevOps team before they can make progress sometimes with their testing. There's no single pane of glass to see the results of all the tests to debug and collaborate, and retrieval of artifacts and logs is difficult, especially with Kubernetes. Finally, testing is linked to build, so to trigger tests, you've got to run a build cycle, and in many cases, that's just not necessary. And these tests don't scale natively because they can't take advantage of native Kubernetes. That's where Testkube comes in. It's a test orchestration system for Kubernetes. It's built for Kubernetes. It creates CRDs from your testing tools so they can run inside the Kubernetes clusters. It separates test orchestration from the CI/CD build process, and it provides testers with a single pane of glass to add, trigger, get results, and artifacts. Testkube works with all of the testing tools you have and all major CI/CD pipelines. This is the management instance of Testkube that is showing you all the tests that have been run or are currently running in the cluster that the Testkube management instance is connected to. Testkube always runs in your cluster locally. The management instance can either be up in the cloud or it can be locally. You can connect the management instance to multiple different clusters, which allows you to get a view of all your clusters from a single pane of glass. Here's a K6 load test that was run. I can dig into it and see the success of it right here. I get all the log output from the test. I can get the artifacts all in a single place. I can drill in and look at some of the settings for the test. I can look at the CRD of that test. If you remember from the introduction, we said one of the pieces of Testkube that makes it so special is that it takes any testing tool and creates a CRD out of it. I can schedule a test to run now. I can schedule it on a time schedule. I can also trigger the test from a CI/CD integration, just like you use today. One of the benefits of Testkube is I can take individual tests and I can string them together into test suites. So here's a test suite called KubeCon Test Suite, and I can go take a look at that setup. And you can see that it's actually a collection of Hello KubeCon tests that are run in parallel, followed by 1 second delay, and then some incremental tests over here called Testkube websites. It's really easy to add incremental tests into a test suite just by clicking the Add Test button. Imagine how much time you'd spend scripting to try to go add tests in parallel to these systems. So that's how you do test and test suites. But how do you actually create a new test? Creating a new test is fairly simple. Type in the name of your test, and then select one of the various testing tools, what we call executors, that are currently in the environment. And then select the source of where you're going to grab the actual test from. Now, one of the common questions we get is, what if one of the testing tools I have is not currently supported in the environment? It's easy to go ahead and package up new testing tools into something we call an executor. Simply click Create New Executor, give it a name, and then point to the executor type and the container image. All you need is a Docker image, and you can go create a CRD from any testing tool. We showed earlier how to go create triggers based on time or based on someone clicking run a test now. You can also create a trigger out of your CI/CD system with simple commands. You could also create triggers based on changes of state of your Kubernetes system. So if you wanted to monitor, for example, your deployment resource, and anytime code changed in that to trigger a test, you could easily do that. Testkube is great at giving you this overall dashboard showing you exactly what is going on in your environment, both from a test standpoint or a test suite standpoint. Testkube also provides a status board that gives you the status of all the most recent tests that have been run in the environment that you can subscribe to. In addition, Testkube supports webhooks, so you can go create webhooks into whichever application you want, specifically around notifications. That's the Testkube demo. Imagine how much time it would take you to do all this work if you're trying to go do it the traditional way of writing scripts, connecting scripts into tests, trying to track down results and artifacts. Let's take a look at some of the top questions we got from KubeCon Chicago. First off, where does Testkube run? Testkube runs in your cluster. There's a management instance that can be run either in the cloud, or you can also run that in your local environment. Does Testkube have an open source version? Yes, there's an open source version that's available for small environment. It works on the concept of one management instance per cluster and does not have RBAC or SSO or some more advanced features. Does Testkube support my testing tool? The answer is yes. Testkube actually supports any testing tool. You just need to create a Docker image of the tool you want to run. And Testkube also supports all the common CI/CD. And finally, final question is, how is Testkube priced? Testkube is priced by environment. So all the versions have unlimited users and unlimited tests. We simply price the product based on the number of environments. If you're ready to get started, you can go to testkube.io to install a version of Testkube. You can also, if you don't want to do that yet, you can also contact us for a demonstration for your team. And if you want to join our enterprise proof of concept program, we're well versed in how to support enterprises through the entire purchasing process. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope we answered all your questions. And just remember, Testkube makes everyone happy.